Good evening. I am aware that this is the last session before we break for today. And just to make sure that I don't preach to the choir, how many of you already know what matter is? A show of hands, please. So that, okay, I think there are a reasonable number of people who are new to matter. Let me start with setting the context. We had a session by Sitaram of Candela Technologies today morning, and there was one very nice slide with a nice beautiful home that he had actually put up with lot of devices that are there, and he said that there are 200 devices that were there in that. What do you notice? Do you notice something interesting in that slide? Almost every device there was a line powered device, right? I could not actually find a non-line powered device, which means that a device that was not connected to the line power. What does that mean? That means that your smart home at this point of time is by and large limited to those devices that are connected to line power and hence fixed to a particular location. Your smart home system or the ecosystem that you have does not have devices that move around, but that doesn't make sense, right? Ideally speaking, your IoT devices or the smart home devices should be devices that are not necessarily tethered, right? They need to be moving around, right? Now, why is it that they are not part of your smart home ecosystem, and why are they not coming in at all? And that largely is because you have the non-line powered devices need to be low power, sleepy end devices which are battery powered, and hence they need to consume very, very less power, right? Which means that you will typically not use Wi-Fi, right? And that is where right now Bluetooth is the default technology. But what we are actually looking at is and what's the primary issue with Bluetooth? The primary issue with Bluetooth is that it is not an IP-based technology, it does not support Internet Protocol, which means that it is not traditionally part of IoT, right? So what's the alternative? The alternative is probably Thread, right? So where Thread is a protocol that you can actually run on very low power devices, right? So now what we are actually looking at is, can we marry the set of devices that are line powered and hence Wi-Fi enabled with a huge set of devices that should have ideally become part of your ecosystem, but they are not part of your ecosystem, which are the IoT low power devices. And that is where Matter comes in. So Matter is an application layer standard that aims to simplify and unify the connected home experience, right? And in my opinion, this is the primary connected home platform where we are seeing a fragmented smart home experience at this point of time. I don't think we have even closely achieved what we wanted to achieve as far as the smart home is concerned. And the talk today is largely about trying to see if I can actually get some of you to agree that Matter is probably the direction towards it. So what are the key aspects of Matter? One, most important, is that it's IP-based networking. It's developer friendly. Open source community projects, right? One of the few standards where you have the development almost in sync with the standardization process, right? Otherwise, there is a huge delay between the time that a standard comes out and an open source version of it coming out into these ones. So this is one of the few projects where it is relatively S1. The setup and commissioning is significantly easier. And that's one of the key things in a smart home kind of an environment. And you can do it over BLE, you can do it over QR, and now NFC is coming. You have something called as distributed compliance ledger, which again brings in a sense of security and other things, right? Multi-admin. Now, one of the big issues in a smart home ecosystem is that there are different ecosystems. There is the Amazon and Alexa ecosystem, there is a Google ecosystem, there is Samsung, and they don't talk to each other. The problem that we have is that we don't buy these ecosystems as a whole, right? We buy individual devices. And if these individual devices don't talk to each other, we are actually stuck, right? We don't have a system in place, right? This is the solution to that, where and one of the key things about Matter is that almost all these major ecosystem vendors have agreed to invest not just participate, invest in Matter, and hence it's probably one of those few protocols where you have significantly wider support from the industry. And multi-admin enables different ecosystems to talk to each other. Local communication and so one of the issues that typically happens is what happens if there is a network breakdown, right? Do your local devices talk to each other? This becomes especially more important as you move towards a world where edge devices becomes more important, right? So local communications is supported within Matter, federated, no single point of failure, and Matter plus thread, right, which includes the 802.16.15.4 is probably the ideal in terms of low power, low cost devices, right? Yeah. So there is a huge ecosystem that is already building, both on the product side. I think every other month I see a product that is being launched. Of course, I need to have a rider here. I see most of these devices product launches happening in Western regions and not so much in the Indian regions. I hope that in the next 1 year, and I'll probably communicate the reason why I believe that we are at an inflection point at this time. There is also a significant support in terms of the SoC players. All the major SoC players who play in the IoT market, essentially the Nordics and the Silicon Labs of the world, they are supporting it. Espressif has a huge SDK that actually supports Matter quite well. So it's much easier for you to get started with. It hardly takes a few thousand rupees for you to sort of get started on Matter. So the key thing that I would want to sort of communicate when it comes to Matter is that apart from the lower layer define the MAC protocols at the 802.15.4 or the 802.11 so on, you have one is the thread, which is for the low power communication stack, and second is your Wi-Fi. And as long as you have Matter on top, right, and because Matter is on the application layer, right, irrespective of what device you have, right, it connects, right. So you have one fabric that integrates both of them, right, and hence they can talk to each other without the user knowing which protocol he is using. The key thing is about making sure that the user's experience is seamless. The user should actually not bother about whether he's using thread or Matter or Wi-Fi or whichever, right? Somebody talked about UWB today morning, and that can be very easily integrated into this as we go forward. But right now, we are looking at Matter or Wi-Fi and Matter or thread as two basic ones. BLE is largely used for commissioning purposes, but there is an approach of taking BLE or IP and then having Matter on top of that, right? If that comes in, then that's a much bigger canvas as well, because there are a lot of devices that are BLE devices that are out of the network. I'll not get into the deep part of this. We can discuss it later if you would want. So one of the other things that is very interesting in the Matter ecosystem is every 6 months there is a release. And I'm seeing this over the past 3 years, right? There is a consistent 6-month release cycle, right? And every release, there is some improvement that is happening. And most of you who were in the standardization space would know that it takes time for a Matter to sort of get accepted in the market. It's been around 5 years now. Before 5 years, it was called as Project Chip. But in overall, I think it's been around 7 to 8 years. I see a significant growth on a year-on-year basis, and we have reached a point where, in my opinion, we can actually have an inflection or a takeoff point. Most of the things that are being looked at right now are the reliability issues, interoperability issues, setup issues, and pairing related issues, which essentially means that the lower level stacks are pretty much stable at this point of time. The other big aspect that happens with Matter in terms of releases is the kind of devices that are actually supported, what are called as device types, right? And as you can see, there were quite a few number of devices that were supported in Matter 1.0 itself in 2022. But as we go further, almost every year, there is a new set of devices that have been added, and Matter 1.4, since this is the last year we had a session on Matter as well at the same event, right? These are the new set of devices that have been added. largely solar panels, batteries, heat pumps, right? Now, these are all integral parts of your smart home ecosystem, essentially the energy management related aspects, and that is something that is one. I'll talk about the home routers and access points, which is probably of interest for the team here. So what has last year been as far as Matter is concerned, right? One of the key things is that Matter 1.4 has actually been released, which includes an improved multi-admin support. Multi-admin essentially, as I said, is about, so if you are in a Amazon Echo or an Amazon ecosystem, you will have a Alexa app, right, through which you will actually control. Now, if you are controlling everything through an Alexa app, and let's say you have a Google device, how will you connect that? That will actually require a multi-admin approach where through your Alexa app, you can control a Google device, right? Now, that is something that has a lot of interdependency between the entities, and that has been sorted out to a significant extent this time. We have significantly larger device support. Very recently, I think 2 or 3 weeks back, we had 1.4.1, where I think we discussed this. Thread 1.4, this is an important aspect. Now, Matter sits on top of threads for the low power communication protocols, and Thread was having a little bit of reliability and interconnectivity issues earlier. A large part of this has been settled in Thread 1.4, and 1.4 is being touted as the stable version of Thread. So to an extent where all the devices that had Thread versions of 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, they are being asked to move to 1.4 so that we have a standardized way of communication, right? Smartphone support. This is another key important aspect which tells me that there is a point of inflection. Both your Android 15, which was released around 6 months back, right, and the iOS, they have started supporting Matter. And one of the foundational things that was actually required was the thread border router support for your Android device. So even now, not all devices have support for this, right? I have a Nothing Phone 3A Pro, which I bought only because it had Android 15, but I am still not finding the solution for enabling that. But Android 15 as a stack has support for a thread where you can actually put it onto a thread mode, right? In which case you can actually connect it to this one, and your phone can actually act as a thread border router, right? The moment you have this, you have a huge ecosystem that can actually operate. Now, if you have a router at home, then and that can actually support as a thread border router, then you don't have a dependency on your phone. But having a phone as a potential thread border router is also an added advantage. There have been significant number of product launches as well. Okay, another key question is about Matter and Wi-Fi. Why Matter and Wi-Fi, right? This is something that is actually evolved. When Matter came up, almost all of us were talking about Matter over Thread almost exclusively. But what has happened now is that, in fact, in my university lab, I had asked people to start with Matter over Thread. They took a significant amount of time to get the initial setup up and working. But when I asked somebody else to sort of try Matter over Wi-Fi, they brought it up in 2 days, right? And that is simply because it is much, much easier for you to sort of get started with Matter over Wi-Fi, right? And it essentially is a very easy marriage, right? Because you have Wi-Fi predominantly everywhere, and you have quite a few number of device platforms on which you have Wi-Fi already available, right? So you have very simple ESP32 devices that you can actually get started with. You have a Raspberry Pi. The entire ecosystem is very easy to get started with, and it's significantly easier to use the set of smart home devices that are already available with you, the Google Nest Hubs, the Amazon Echoes and other things, and you can actually extend that with your own devices that you would want to sort of hack around with. This is probably an important thing for you. There is in the Matter 1.4 version, there is something called as an HRAP mode, which is home router and access point, where the intent is to make your Wi-Fi router also a a third bottom router and a Matter control thing. What do you achieve by that? You are essentially connecting the line powered devices and the battery powered devices together, so that you don't need a separate IoT gateway. You don't need a separate residential gateway or any other device, right? So your actual home router becomes pretty much the core, right? And that is probably the ideal state for all of us, right? So and multi-protocol support, right, which is crucial for a smart home, will essentially get enabled if we just enable a thread plus Matter plus Wi-Fi on the same device, right? And that is something that I'm looking for. I tried looking at how many devices are available in India. There are not many. There are quite a few that are available in the Eero devices and all those kind of things, right? But how many of them are deployed in India, especially in the smart homes? Not many, right? So I think there is a huge opportunity for those of you who are on the router side of it to see if you can capture that market. Co-commissioning of thread and Wi-Fi devices is obvious, right? And it forms a backbone for future smart home development, because the moment you are on Matter, right, and because you have application device types, right, you are actually future-proofing the entire smart home structure. So it can be made as an extensible setup that you can work with. Matter casting is another thing that I felt would take off significantly, because Matter casting is an alternative to your Chromecast, right, where you have an application layer approach where you can cast from your smartphone to your TV. You might ask, why do we need that? That's largely because Chromecast and other things are proprietary. This is an open standard, right? So Amazon Fire TV sticks have support for this, but beyond Amazon Fire TV and Panasonic, I have not seen too much of traction on Matter casting, at least this year. I'm hoping that it will happen the next year, right? The lower layer, physical layer protocols will remain the same. It is only at the application layer that you are actually looking at the casting part, right? And that I hope will happen in the next academic year. Sorry, I'm used to saying academic year. The next year that will happen. And Matter 1.5 is going to be a significant shift, right? Which is going to happen December this year. There is a lot of streaming support that is going to come in, largely for security cameras, right? So the device type of security cameras is not enabled as of now in Matter, and that I believe is a big chunk. The moment security cameras come, just like what our friend from Amazon spoke, right? I think we'll have a significant number of devices that we can actually add on to the smart home ecosystem, right? So along with that, I think casting will become a much bigger as well. With that, I'll probably talk a little bit about Atria University. We call ourselves India's first liberal STEM university. We are trying to focus on interdisciplinary 4-year majors, where we are talking about digital transformation, energy sciences, life sciences, e-mobility, and sustainable entrepreneurship. So you will not find computer science, electronics, mechanical, those kind of silos. We believe the graduate of the future has to work across all these layers, and he needs to be able to work in interdisciplinary areas. And we have turned the pedagogical approach top-down, in the sense that we believe that students need to work on things, experience things before they learn the theory, and not the other way around, which is what we have been doing. So a large part of what we have done is about change the pedagogical approach, so that students experiment on things and then get onto the theoretical aspects. And we have changed the delivery approach as well. Rather than having a semester-based approach, we have what are called as learning sprints, where for 3 weeks they will focus on one subject at a time, but in an immersive manner. So 9 to 4, they are focusing on one subject at a time and everything related to that. So they'll learn the theory related to that, they'll do the practicals or the experience aspect, and they'll implement a project in groups. So that's essentially the approach that we are actually taking. Now, the key thing that I'm trying to do here in this particular event is that we have a center of excellence for connected intelligence, which is what I head at Atria. I would want to set that up as a center for Matter protocol as such in India. I see that the community for Matter protocol has not built in India, and I believe that there is a opportunity for people to sort of come together and form a community for Matter. So I would urge people who are interested in this to sort of join us. One of the other key things that I would want to do in the university is to break the so-called industry academia barrier, which is a huge barrier in India. I would want to have people from the industry come to the university, play around, hack things, innovate, sit with students, right, and see how you can actually complement with the students, right? So that's something that I am actually looking for. So please do reach out to me for that. And as I said, it's an open platform that I'm trying to build there. We'll probably kickstart with a one-day workshop. I said this last year as well, but then I got around four people connecting with me. I hope this time I'll probably receive a bit more. The other good thing is now I have around 8 to 10 devices which are Matter connected. We have 2 Matter over Wi-Fi devices on SDKs, and we have 2 Matter over Thread devices that we have actually connected. So the base setup is already up and running, so you can actually start leveraging that. So I'm thinking of having a one-day Saturday workshop sometime end of June, right? So that's essentially what I'm actually looking at. People who are interested, please do reach out to me on these things. I would be happy to sort of interact with you. I would urge you to sort of come sit in the labs, play around, see if you can come up with your own smart home device, right? We have quite a few number of devices that we can sort of work with. Any questions I can take now?
Just put up your hand. Any questions? Actually, I'll invite Sitarama, Nadeem, Vishnu is here. I hope Vishnu is not gone. Please come. Who else have I missed out speaker-wise? I think Sitarama, Nadeem, Vishnu, Sandeep. Sandeep, if you're here, we do want to give them a small gift. But I'm also hoping that the questions, if there are anything we could not get across, we have time for these people to also address some questions. So there's a hand up. Please get the mic. Yeah. While getting the mic, how effective has Matter been in practice?
So there are very few number of people in India that have tried Matter, right? Companies are trying it out. When I speak to OEMs, it is more like, these are interesting things that we are looking forward to, but this is not my plan A. That is where the Indian companies are. But when I speak to my friends in the US, at least a couple of them, they said that they are actually looking at Matter seriously. And that's where I see a difference in the Matter ecosystem in the US and the Matter ecosystem in India. And that I alluded largely because of the kind of devices that have proliferated in the American homes and the devices that have proliferated here, right? So most of the devices that require both Thread and Matter support are already there in most of the homes in the US. In India, they are coming in.
Yeah, continuing on that same question, so what are the actual barriers that are preventing the OEMs and companies to implement Matter in their IoT devices?
So I think the key aspect is, 1 minute. So if you look at it, when you look at IoT, right, this is part where you actually say you're a smart connected product, where you just take a particular device and then connect it to the internet and then say this is connected, right? But the actual value of IoT comes when you move to a system where you're connecting multiple devices. You have data coming from one device influencing the decision of some other device, right? Now that ability to view something as a system, right, needs to come from somewhere, right? So one view of that was from the ecosystem view, where the Samsungs and the Amazons, they will actually give one ecosystem. In India, we don't have that kind of an approach. Unless you buy a house with a smart home kind of a branded thing where the builder gives you don't have that. So as a individual user, right, you are buying different things. You are not looking at it as a system, right? So we as probably the techies will need to take that step forward, where we start looking at our home as a system rather than independent connected devices that are there, right? I think that's a mindset barrier. The moment a few people start doing this, right, where you look at your home as a system, right, then it becomes a commonplace thing. But as of now, in India, we are not looking at our homes as smart homes. We are just looking at individual devices. I hope that answered your questions.
I think 2 questions. Nadeem, yeah.
So I see this is still a very consumer-centric.
Yes.
Is there any scope for enterprise,
Excellent is one. So the way I see this is that I don't see a reason why this cannot go into an enterprise, right? Especially enterprise and probably further into an industrial setup as well, right? Because all the things that are actually required for what is required there, right, are all there in the Matter protocol. But the primary drivers of this ecosystem are people who are in the consumer space, the Amazons and the Googles. And because they are from the consumer space, they are driving it that way, right? But if I look at it from a Matter technology perspective, I think it can be taken elsewhere as well.
Hey, I have a few questions.
Yes.
Do you have any clear requirement in particular different use cases? Okay, if I want to use thread, BLE, how much percentage throughput or any kind of particular use cases do you have it?
You mean use cases on when to use thread and when to use BLE?
Yeah, when you are using BLE, thread, particular thing.
The differentiation is very clear there, right? So BLE is largely a peer-to-peer protocol. So when you are actually having a device that you need to connect to your phone, and then for example your smartwatch, right, you are just connecting it to your phone, right? Now in those cases you are actually using it using BLE, right? But the fundamental issue that you have with BLE is that given that it is not IP compliant, right, you can't reach from the other side, right? And you can't actually have a situation where if the phone is not there, then the device is pretty much disconnected from the network, right? So in my opinion, thread ideally should be a replacement for BLE because the power profiles are very similar, right? And given that it is IP compliant with the same power profile, it should ideally be a replacement. But will it be a replacement? It will take a very long time, right? Because BLE has entrenched itself so much, right, that it is available on each and every device that you have. So I think BLE and thread will coexist for a period of time, right? The best solution to this aspect is for me to have Matter and then have multiple technologies, not just Wi-Fi and thread, but also BLE and probably UWB and many other, even Ethernet as well, right? I should have Matter over Ethernet as well. There's no reason why I should not have that.
Okay, one more
Especially
question is,
enterprise use cases, sorry.
Okay. As you said, in 1.4 spec, there is a home router advantage on the Matter, right? Do you have any clearly the requirements, in terms of Wi-Fi, is there any requirements brought it, say that in terms of, hardware capabilities or something else?
No, I don't think there's no requirement from a hardware Wi-Fi hardware capability because this is an application layer thing.
That's right. But if you look out, if you compare with thread and BLE, both are very low power spec,
Correct.
right? But if you come to the Wi-Fi, it is completely different, right?
So
but when you're talking about Matter, or okay, when you're doing that, is there any requirement say that okay, if I go with Wi-Fi over Matter or Wi-Fi, right? Do you have any kind of say that okay, this can be low power or this can be low capabilities in terms of Wi-Fi?
Okay, so one thing that is come in is in the recent version of Matter, there is an explicit that is support that is given for sleepy end devices, right? Which is Matter for Wi-Fi devices that can actually sleep for up to 18 hours, if I remember correctly, right? That is one of the key things that has actually come in, right? But that is more at the application layer. As far as the Wi-Fi is concerned, I don't think there is any constraint that Matter adds on to it. So Matter will work on any Wi-Fi irrespective of what is actually there below it, whether it is Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7. Even I am hoping Halo will actually add a significant value because then you actually get significant range, right? That will actually come in, right? And because it is significantly higher up in the East one, I think we are pretty much abstracted out as far as the East one is concerned. And if you'll typically not take a thread border router and slap Wi-Fi on top of it. What you'll do is you'll take a Wi-Fi router and access point and then slap thread on top of it.
Okay, thanks, Vijay.